And in just a moment, we're going to hear from the editor of Private Eye and star of Have I Got News for You, Ian Hislop. But first, Lewis, you have some seat breakdowns for us and some more information.
Yes, Andrew, I was talking before about Nuneaton. And again, just to show you this latest result, look at Labour at 37%, which is a touch-up on the 2019 result. The Conservatives in Nuneaton in 2019 had 60% of the vote. They had a numerical majority of over 13,000. Conservatives now on 29%. But again, there's not that much transference in percentage of the vote terms to the Labour Party. It's been mainly picked up again by Reform. And again, this is the trend that we're seeing throughout the night, that Labour is on its way to winning a clutch of seats. We've also got Darlington as well, which they've gained. But I've actually got fewer votes in Darlington than they did in 2019, with exactly the same pattern emerging again. So there's lots of variation in these results so far, but that does seem to be the main theme. Worth saying as well in terms of the Lib Dems, just hearing from a Lib Dem source that they're confident that they've taken Michael Gove's seat of Surrey Heath, former seat, I should say, because of course he's down.
Surrey Heath, wow.
Yeah. And Andrew, just to add to that, we're hearing as well that the Lib Dems are confident that they've taken another cabinet minister's seat, Alex Chalk, in Cheltenham, which once upon a time was a Liberal Democrat seat. So the Liberal Democrats saying they have taken that seat as well. Massive result, they're claiming.
Really big result. Ian, this seems to be the overall picture is the country wants to kick out the Conservatives and will do whatever it takes, wherever it takes to do that.
Yes, and that was really clear during the campaign. It's a punitive exercise by the public. Yeah. And all those Tory spokesmen saying, we've got to go to the future, not the past. And the public's thinking, no, we're going to punish you for the past. We've had 14 years of it.
We still feel like we're sitting in it, is what they said.
And the boot is going in. It's slightly... there are a number of people saying the exit poll isn't right now. I know you've slightly...
It could be worse for the Conservatives than the exit poll. Even worse. It could be not a disaster, but a catastrophe, if I can put it that way.
Yes. I mean,
as a political observer, what do you think about this notion that is coming from Lewis's numbers there, that the Labour Party might come out with a massive number of seats, but actually not a very deep level of support across the country, quite a low percentage support?
Yeah, well, again, with a low turnout, that seems to be what happens, doesn't it? Yeah. Which makes it more volatile.
But does that undermine Keir Starmer's credibility and authority in due course, or do the sheer numbers overwhelm that?
I think probably the Labour Party will find it's a huge supporter of the first-past-the-post system, and that it seems to be going very well. And my other prediction is they'll look at what the 16-year-olds are voting, which isn't always Labour, and think, do you know, I think we'll let these young people wait a bit. So again, I think it'll be a huge win, and the Labour Party will say this is a huge win. What the Conservatives will say, I have no idea, apart from sorry. And
we've already had one. It's disastrous from a Conservative MP who is in with us.
Yes, well, understatement.
And for a satirical magazine, have there ever been 6 weeks more glorious than the past 6 weeks?
Not that I can remember.
Or indeed 14 years.
The campaign was fabulous. And again, not many commentators saying part of the reason the Tories are getting such a kicking is they did run the worst campaign ever. And I know support was the same at the end as it was at the beginning, but you'd have thought the governing party could have managed to change that.
Worst
and it
bit?
Was fabulous.
Worst bit?
Worst bit. I thought the coming home early from D-Day was it partly because it just suggested that no one had ever met anyone in Britain. We're quite keen on the Second World War. I don't know if anyone's looked at the bestseller lists. That's what's in them. Documentaries, mostly about the Nazis. I mean, it doesn't take a huge amount of knowledge of this country to think, just stand there for the day.
I mean, people familiar with your work, whether it's on Have I Got News for You or relatively frequent appearances on Question Time, will know that you can be very pithy. Tough to be pithy about 14 years, but how would you sum up these 14 years of Tory government?
Bad.
Oh, come on, you can do better than that. That's not satire.
No, that's stating the obvious, but that's where satire goes sometimes.
I know.
No, I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise that they're being judged not just on the 6 weeks, but the 6 weeks, everything turned into a metaphor for everything else.
John?
I was just thinking of the John Major, Boris Yeltsin story, where John Major asks Yeltsin, what do you think, what's the state of the Russian economy? And he says, good. But Mr. President, if you were to give a longer answer, what would it be? not good.
Okay,
Sorry.
I would add very bad.
Exactly.
But it got to the point where the Conservatives were doing these photo opportunities, and I said, you know, there were a group of journalists, and I said, it wouldn't matter what he stood in front of, the Titanic, the brewery, you'd find it funny. And the Spads were all furious and saying, well, if we put him in front of a desk, would that please you? And then someone said, clear your desk. Which made me laugh.
I mean, the rain with no umbrella, it was an indelible image. It stuck in your head, the sort of drowned rat. And then they did literally go and stand in front of the Titanic, or where the Titanic was built.
The following day.
The following day. And you looked at the long shot of what we called Drowning Street, which obviously made us laugh at the time. The journalists all had umbrellas. Even that discredited profession, which isn't great on foresight.
Do you think
we had umbrellas?
They had a plan, but not an umbrella.
Do you think maybe the Steve McLaren moment was too indelibly in someone's mind anyway, if not Rishi Sunak, someone else's?
I suppose so, but they're always trying to avoid the last disaster, and then they walk straight into the next one. And again, Michael would know this, but usually Tory prime ministers are really desperate to get 5 minutes with an American president. If you remember, Sunak was going to airports and helping Biden with his bags, anything to say hello. He gets a chance on D-Day to stand there next to him, free photo op, and he says, no, I'll go home and do an interview.
With Paul Brand of ITV, which won't go well. That's a great idea.
In which someone will be rude to you again.
Well, listen, you were talking earlier on, both of you, about the exit poll and how it is not certain. A few other things aren't certain. Well, not least we have many, many, many seats to come still. Interestingly, Billericay and Basildon, as we've mentioned a couple of times, that seat, which could see the Conservative Party chairman Richard Holden lose his seat and fail big time there. That would be a big scalp of the night. But there is a full recount taking place at that seat. Lewis is here all night for us. There have been some more constituencies. You're not going anywhere. With Reform in second place. Tell us more.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it's just worth looking at this because it's going to be a big feature of the politics of the new Parliament. Just these seats here, mainly in the North East, though not exclusively. See, just in numerical terms here, where the Reform Party, pretty much from nowhere in nearly all of these seats, leapfrogging the Conservatives into second place. So Blyth and Ashington, 20,000 Labour, 10,000 for Reform. Barnsley North, 18,000, 10,000 for Reform. Go down to Sunderland Central, 16,000, 10,000 for Reform. Now, Labour are saying that they think, by their calculations, that Reform aren't necessarily going to do quite as well in numerical terms in seats as the exit poll perhaps suggested. But that's going to be cold comfort for a lot of these Labour MPs who, of course, have done well tonight because the Labour Party is getting a majority of 170 tonight. It's probably their high watermark for the next generation. But what happens over the course of the Parliament? What does Keir Starmer do? How does he modify Labour politics to address this question, when you consider, of course, as well, that as the night goes on and we start to see Labour MPs being returned against, say, Greens in second place, or the Lib Dems in second place, just managing to balance that delicate calibration of the politics of the Parliament is going to be difficult for Starmer.
I tell you what, though, one of the interesting things about the exit poll, and again, Sheila, going back to what you were saying, it might not be accurate. When the exit poll came out, they were giving Barnsley North as 99% certain that it would go to Reform. And Dan Jarvis has been returned with an 8,000 majority. Now, if that was one of the strong, likely seats for Reform, and Labour have held it with an 8,000 majority, again, maybe we need to rethink what some of this exit poll is showing us. That, while, Reform is certainly doing really, really well, actually, Labour are holding on.
And just as well, we've just had Swindon North, the other Swindon seat.
Yep.
Another gain for Labour, this time on an even bigger swing of 18.7%. Again, more than the exit poll would imply. So generally speaking, around the country, Lib Dem battlegrounds, Labour battlegrounds, the Tories are doing worse than the exit poll would suggest.